Hello my friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa Stringworks workshop. We have a guest at our rental retreat right now. His name is George Adams and he's from the Houston, Texas area. And he brought me this. It's a Gibson guitar and it's got the old dreaded adjustable bridge on it. Nice looking guitar. It says country western model. I don't actually see anything else in there that indicates any other information about the model, but it's a nice guitar. It's got a few little whoopties on it, as you can see. It's got a couple little cracks in it. I think the one crack was all the way from when it was new. This one right up here, it's a small little line, maybe. I'm trying to get the light to shine and reflect on it where you can see it maybe. I don't know if that's going to happen, but there's a crack right there, and then there's a new crack right here. This one's loose, I'm pretty sure. I think you can hear it rattle. So we'll have to fix that. Maybe just put some CA glue on that one because it's a pretty tight crack. I don't think it's anything real serious. Then we do have issues with the bridge. I'll show you that. First, let's see how much of a belly. Now, the strings are loose. But even with the strings loose, you can see there's a reasonable belly there. It's rocking pretty good. You know, when I rock it up like that, I would say we're 1/4 inch in the air when I rock it. If I try to hold it level on each side, I'd say we're an 1/8 inch. So this is high by about an 1/8 inch right here compared to both sides. So it's, you know, it's pulled up pretty good. Evidence of that, I don't have to put it under tension. I can see that this piece of paper goes underneath here most of the way across. In fact, I think all the way across. Yeah, pretty much right to right there. I think it's might be tight right on that corner. And this is bolted on under here. So I think we're going to get rid of all that, and I think we're just going to put a standard bridge on it. He's not real happy with the sound. He said he gets kind of a muted sound on the middle strings. Well, I kind of think that might be due to this. I think this is porcelain. Now, it might be a different material, but I've seen these before, and I believe this is a porcelain material. So if we put a regular bridge on here and a deer antler saddle, I think that'll improve the sound a whole lot. I haven't inspected the bridge plate yet to see if it's tight or loose. I do know that there's a lot of glue squeezed out around the bridge plate, and that was from the factory. I can tell that's not a re-glue. It's kind of a sloppy job on the bridge pad in there. But anyway, we'll try to show you that too, but I'm going to get it unstrung and we'll move on from there. Before I unstring this, I felt right here, and there's quite a bump there, and I just wonder if this neck has any issues. I don't think it does. I don't really see anything along the edges here that would indicate a problem, but that's an unusual feeling transition there. There's like a ditch, just really, for lack of a better word, there's a ditch right there. You don't usually feel that. So I'm a little curious about that. I think I will go ahead and string it up to tension, and that'll also give me a better look at this hump. So I'll do that before I unstring it. As I was getting ready to tighten up the strings on this, I'm noticing that the tuning keys are pretty hard to turn. So these little holes, that's what they're for, is to oil that. So I'm going to put some oil in here. By the way, I see the serial number here. It is 207, and that would be 601, I believe. I don't have my close-up glasses, but that's what it looks like. Yeah, the last number is hard to read, but I'd say that's a 1. 207601. Okay, I'm going to see if I can get a little bit more oil in these. Turning it a little bit. This one here is bent. That one's bent a little bit. These top two get bent because the guitar falls over and bends the key. That's what happens. So we may see if we can straighten that too. I'm not 100% sure I can straighten it. And I could be playing with fire. I kind of don't like to straighten these. It's a little straighter, but it's still not perfectly straight. These pliers here are not as sturdy as the ones I used to have. These are the store brand pliers here. I may have to try something else. Okay, I'm going to try. This is dangerous, I got to admit. I kind of don't like doing this, but I don't like to see them bent either. So here we go. That's pretty good on that one, I think. Quite a bit better, yeah. I wouldn't call either one of those perfect, but I'd say they're improved over where they were for sure. And sometimes you just want to stop when you get an improvement, because you could end up breaking something with excessive force. So that worked out just fine, and we're going to let that go. And I'm hoping that oil has worked its way into those tuners now. I'll wipe up the excess oil here. And don't ever be afraid to oil your tuning keys. It won't cause them to slip, I promise you. Well, got the guitar up to pitch. I thought I'd let you hear it. It's got a nice sound. You know, my first impression is that it's got the sound of old strings. And I'm not sure how old these strings are. I would say they're old. They look like they may be the coated strings also. Between those two things, that will definitely mute the sound. But I also think that it'll improve a lot when we change this all out here too. I really do. I think it's just, there's too much going on there to let the transfer of the sound just go straight into the top. It's got a good sound, but it's not a punchy sound. And you might say, well, I don't want a punchy sound. Well, the thing is, if you get that sound punching out of there, then you can play it soft, you know, and you can get a soft sound out of it. But if you really want the volume, you know, and it's not real bad on the volume, but it's just, I can just tell it can be better. I can just tell it can be better. But it may just be the strings, maybe most of it, I don't know. So anyway, now that we've got it tuned up, let's just take a look and see how the hump looks here now, and see if it's changed much. I said it was about 1/8 of an inch, and I would say that it's a strong 1/8 now. It didn't go up much, but it is a little bit more. I'd say it's a strong 1/8 of an inch. You know, it did increase maybe just a hair. Now let's take a look at the bridge and see if it looks like it's any looser than it was. Yeah, I can feel it go. It goes under there pretty good. It's definitely going under there pretty good. I think I'm actually going all the way to the bridge pins with the corner there. I would say almost definitely. So it's fairly loose. Doesn't mean it's going to come off easy, but it's fairly loose. So we'll see how that goes. I've got the strings off it, as you can see, and we're about ready to start taking this apart. I'm going to have to get these inlays out of here because there's a screw underneath each one of these. And
I can feel the little nut on them.
Yeah, and we're going to have to do all of that. So I'm going to go ahead and unscrew this out of here, and we'll see where it goes from there. And they put kind of a springy shim underneath there for some reason. I'm not exactly sure why. Probably to keep the screws from sliding back and forth.
Yeah.
So that's what that looks like.
First time that's been done.
And then we need to see if we can get these inlays out. And I'm just going to manhandle them here because we're not going to use this bridge again.
That's right.
Now I got to get the glue out of the way so I can get to the screw head. I can feel the nut and the washer coming loose on the inside. I think I got it. Well, I guess I lost the washer. It's inside there somewhere. See if I can get down to the slot with all that glue. There we go. We found the slot there, and yet there's more hardware on the inside here too, I can feel, besides these.
Probably be a good thing to get rid of all that stuff.
Yeah, it'll help the sound even. Okay, and then there's the big bolts inside here that have to come loose. Oh, I can unscrew them with my hand. That's always handy. And so we got those out. Those are quite large to have inside of an acoustic guitar.
Golly, 1/4 inch.
Yeah, I think those might even be 5/16. I don't know. Good size for sure. Okay, well, that's got that loose. So now we're going to have to heat up the iron and get started taking this off. Okay, I've got this heater up to temperature already. It heats up pretty darn fast. I've got it set on 420, but the actual temperature at the moment says 433. And it'll go up and down as time goes on. I'm letting it sit here on the bridge so that it'll really get that bridge good and hot. And I'll take my tool. Yeah, this was an artist palette knife. They heat up really fast. It's a very stiff metal, and yet you can sharpen it really good, and it heats up really good. You don't want a flimsy blade when you start taking the bridge off. Trust me, I know that a flimsy blade will bend very easily when you start pushing them under here. And there, as I've said many times, there's no zipper on these things. You're basically breaking it when you take them apart. And so the idea is to heat that up so that the glue softens enough that when you break it, you're breaking it soft instead of hard. And I think it's pretty hot right now, so I'm going to see how far I can get this under there. Wow, easy. Well, that's the easiest one I think I ever did. It went right under there, no problem. Oh my gosh, that seriously has got to be one of the easiest bridges I've ever taken off, which indicates that it was pretty loose. I don't think I ever took one off that quick or that simple before. So there you go. That's how you do it. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do now that this came off is scrape all this off of here. And the only reason I'm scraping it off of here is because I want it flat, so when I trace around it, I don't have any obstructions and it's not rocking on me and all that. And it only takes a second to get it flat. So it's, in my opinion, even though you don't need to do it, it's worth doing just because now it'll be easier to trace instead of having all those bumps under it. Now I got to find me a piece of wood that we can use in place of this. Well, I found a piece of rosewood here that I'm going to use. It's a nice piece. It looks like it's going to work just fine. It's a little bigger than I need, so I'll trace around it. I'm going to leave just a teeny bit of front edge on this and trace the back with my larger pencil here so that I'll leave all of the lead showing, and that's how much bigger it'll be. It's not like it's going to be huge, it's just a little bigger. That helps cover up any scarring. You know, it just makes it a little stronger too. Every little bit matters. As long as you don't go to extremes, it's all good. So there you go. We'll go ahead and cut that out and we'll move on to the next step. In real time, that only took a few minutes to make that. Now I'm going to check the thickness of this and see if I think we're in the ballpark. This is pretty thin. I'm going to try to find the thickest place on it. 278. I don't feel comfortable making them only that thin. That's kind of thin. I think I'm going to make it right at 300 thousandths. That's adding about 22 thousandths there, which is not much. In fact, I think I'll go to 325 on this. Right now it's at 409, so I'm going to take this down a good amount. Okay, I said I'd go to 325. I went to 326. Doggone it, I'm slipping. You'd have to take one of your hairs and split it down the length of it 4 times to get to that. But, you know, 1,000th is 1,000th. Okay, so what I do now is I just look at the old bridge and I just kind of get an idea where the curl went up to. And it's, you know, you don't really measure this type of thing. You just kind of do it by eye. And it's just approximately right there. We'll just make them even on both ends. And now I can do this with my thickness sander also.
I'm blue all over again. I'm blue for you, darling. I can't try to pretend I'm not, 'cause I'm blue all over again.
This bridge is down to 100 thousandths, or 103 on that end, and about 105 on that end. I'm going to go down to about 120. This is right now, it's at 160, so I'm going to take about 40 more thousandths off of this, and that's where I'm going to land, I believe. Well, I went a little bit past my mark, actually. I didn't realize it, but I went down to 115, and that's still about 10 thousandths more than what was there originally, so I'm okay with that. I think that'll be just fine. I was thinking maybe I would go to a 120, but I took about 5 thousandths off more than what I had intended, and the reason I did that was I just made a mistake, but I don't consider it a real mistake because, I mean, the other bridge has been on there for, I don't know, 60 years now, and it's thinner than this one, so I don't think we're in any kind of a problem area. The other thing about that is when you think about it, and it sounds like a lot, 5 thousandths of an inch is the thickness of one hair. Take a hair out of your head, and that's how much I went too thin. So it's pretty fine woodworking when you get down to this level. These inserts are a little bit loose in this guitar, but they're not loose enough to grab a hold of.
Come out.
And so I'm screwing this down in there, and I'm going to try to get it to come out. It would probably unscrew if I could find a way to unscrew it, but it's just wood on wood is all it is. I mean, it's this metal on wood. I think what I'm going to try is one of those little nuts and see if I can jam it in here and then see if I can spin this thing out. I'm going to try a jam nut on this to jam it tight, and I am spinning the whole insert on the inside, and I'm pushing up with my finger on the inside, and it's not moving.
You don't think it's reverse threaded? I guess there's no way it'd be that.
No, it's not reverse threaded because I took these nuts off of it. Well, I'm pushing up on that metal as hard as I can push up on it, and it's unscrewing it, and it is spinning. It's absolutely spinning. I can feel it spinning, but it is not coming up.
Not at all.
Not at all. It's just spinning in place. So it's one of those deals where you just have to cut your losses at some point, and it's just got to come out of there. So I'm just going to grab a hold of it, and I'm going to pull it out of there one way or the other. There it is.
Comes right on out.
So there's what it is. I knew what it was, and I knew what it looked like, but I just couldn't get it out of there.
Sure enough.
But we got her out of there now. So I'll do the same thing. I'll jam this one in there and see if it'll unscrew, and if it won't, we'll just pull it out of there. Okay, I'm going to hold the screw and tighten the nut down tight on the bolt, and it's really tight now, so I should be able to unscrew this one also, or at least get it to spin. Yep, it's spinning. I can feel it on the inside. Again, it doesn't look like it's going to back up though. Yep, this one is. Actually, this one is unscrewing, so that's a good deal. Yeah, the other one was just stripped out. This one backed right on out. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make 2 plugs for this and fill it in. Then after we get those plugs made, we'll go on from there. Okay, so I made this first plug to fill this first hole, and as you can see, it Fits it just about perfect. It stands up a little bit proud, but that's the way I intended it, so I can plane it off there and make it just perfect. So I'm going to get the wood glue on this using Tight Bond. So I'm about ready to take a lunch break here, so this will give me time to eat lunch while this is setting up, and then we can move on to the next part. So there you go. Now I got to make one more for that one. And so the next one's made. All I got to do is cut it off to length. So I'll just mark the length here. And as always, I cut them off a little proud so that I can trim them down to the perfect size. Well, this has been drying for about an hour and a half. It's time now that I can trim these down. And I have my little 8mm finger plane. And that should do the job. Pretty good. I think that'll do for right now. Now I'm gonna get this bridge on here, and I think I'm just gonna center it over the scar that's there. I think we'll be fine. I'm gonna just center it up on this, and then we'll trace around it here in just a minute. Now this one's not wanting to sit still, so I'm afraid if I try to mark it like this, I mean, I could clamp it or something, but I figure I might as well go ahead and get the holes drilled. It'll sit a little stiller, I think, if I do that. I can put the pins in there. I think I'll just go ahead and get it marked for the holes. Just try and line it up real good, make sure everything's lined up as well as I can line it up. So all the holes are marked there. I'm going to go ahead and get those drilled. I'll just drill them right on the center. I did also take a file and round off all these corners. It wouldn't hurt to round this back edge off a little bit more. This bridge is pretty squared off. It's a little bit round here, so I think I'll go ahead to the sander and round this just a little bit. Well, that should take care of the actual holes. Now I'll use the step drill to bevel them. I find this works better than about anything. I've got a whole bunch of chamfering bits. I mean, every one that's been made, I've pretty much got one. But actually this seems to do the best job without any tear out at all. So that's why I use it. It just seems to work the best. The only thing I have problems with is I have run out in this drill chuck if I'm not careful. It's always been this way with this drill. I've changed chucks several times. It's probably the shaft itself, but there's times when you chuck it up and it's just perfectly fine too. It's a little better. It does do a real nice, easy job when you use that. You don't have to worry about tear out or anything. I think that's because they're designed to drill through thin sheet metal. Well, I have this in there. I've got it in there, got some pins in there just to help me hold it still so it doesn't move around on me. And I'm going to scribe the line here. Okay, I think that'll work. You can see there that I have scribed around the whole thing, and there's quite a bit of space there where the old bridge was sitting on top of that finish, which is never good in either. So we're going to clean this all up, level this all out in between here, and we should be good to go. The way I typically start that is with this tool. Being scored like I did, it should chip up pretty easily. Now that's just the finish. I might actually have to take a little bit of wood with it around the edges too, just to level this all up. Well, I think you can see my technique there, and I just use this tool. This tool here is, you could use a chisel. I just made this tool because it just worked really good. I just used the little planer blade in here and tightened it down. I like the fact that it's got the round blade. I can wiggle and waggle it back and forth and kind of just easily knock these pieces out. I'm looking at this here, trying to decide if my cut goes where my cut goes. It's really hard to tell here. I thought I marked it well enough, but I don't think it's marked all that well on the front side here. So well, you can see what I'm doing, so it's just a tedious bunch of work now. I'll just have to clean it all up, and I'll show you what it looks like when I get her cleaned up. I see evidence where you can see these pretty uniform lines going down through here, and then I looked here and I can see it in the glue too, and so they had toothed this, I guessed, thinking that that was going to make it stronger, when in fact making teeth that large and that deep really makes it weaker. It would have been much stronger had this been flatter. So I'm not going to get it all the way flat because I have to take off too much wood, but I'm kind of raking at a diagonal across here, trying to get rid of most of that and trying to, get it relatively flat to boot and get rid of all the extra stuff hanging on. It's pretty good shape actually right now. If I glued it on right now, it would be fine. I always try to get them just as good as I can because you really only get one shot at this. I should say you really only get one good shot at it. You can always do it again, but you just do more damage each time, And I would rather not do any more damage and make sure that it never comes off again. That feels pretty good. Let me see what it feels like when I get the bridge on here. Oh, yeah, it's way solider than it was already, I can tell. Yeah, because before it would, with all that finish on there, it was trying to wiggle. Now I can't move it. I can move the guitar, but it doesn't move at all. I'm just looking around the edges to see if it looks good enough, and I think it does. I think I'm going to go ahead and get her glued in place. So I'll get me a caul and the clamps and show you how I do that. I have stuck this caul up in there, and it seems like it's going to work good, and it's a good thick heavy caul that'll keep it flat. That's the main thing I'm trying to do. I'm going to have to take these pins out of there for gluing up because they stick through far enough that the caul hits them, and I don't want them in there for that. Just feeling these one more time here, making sure there's no bump. I think there's still a little tiny hump right there on that one. Okay, so we'll get our glue on here. This is scratched up with some rough sandpaper, so it's fine. I don't think I need to do any more. I always like to glue both surfaces. This will make sure that the glue sticks better, or that the bridge, I should say, sticks better to the top, that there's a better bond. You can just glue one side and let it squeeze out, but that doesn't work as well as when you work it into all the cracks and crevices. Got more glue here than I'm going to need, I'm sure, so I'm going to spread it around. And actually the outside corners, which seems to always be the place that comes loose, that's the sure place you don't want to skimp. You want to make sure you get good coverage. It's just about ready to go back on here. As you can see, I've got the glue covered on here very, very well. I don't think it can be done any better. I think that's as good as it gets. I'm going to use these bridge pins for a second here just to help myself line up, because that glue sometimes kinds of makes it a little squirrely. That feels pretty good. I thought about trying to tape this one in here, but I would prefer not to do that if I don't have to. And I think I can get it without taping it. Oh, it's just right on the edge of being tall enough. I don't think the clamp's gonna go. Oh, it's so close. Yeah, it'll go, just barely. These clamps are just a little bigger, so this should go without any trouble. And what I'm trying to do is take that bridge now and make that bridge and that caul flatten this top out perfectly flat. So that's why I like a lot of pressure on this. Get it really good and squeezed together. Get it all flattened back out. Now I got those tight. Now I can tighten these end things down to put the pressure on the out there on the end of the wings, and that squeezes out the glue then too, as you can see. Those are tight. That should be there to stay. Now I'll clean up the glue, and then it's all over, but wait until tomorrow. Well, while this is clamped up here, glued up, I'm just going to lightly dress these frets. I've looked down them and they don't look bad, but there is some fret wear up in here. So what I'm going to do is kind of feather it. You know, you can get away with that if you know how to do it. And in other words, you don't have to take these back here down as much as these up here, but you do have to feather it all so that it all blends. This fingerboard feels amazingly flat. Typically I just feel a high spot here, high spot there. This one's gliding pretty smooth all the way. We're very close. I can still see the least little hint of marks, and when you can go right up to that, and then that's where I like to stop. That way you're not filing too much. Go just a little bit more on this one, and then I think I'm there. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, I wasn't hitting up in here very much, and we may need to hit that a little bit, but I'm going to turn it around and do that just to help feather it into this. And by the way, off camera, we glued in a whole bunch of these little inserts here. These are they're inlaid, but they appear to be mother of pearl, but they're actually a type of plastic. It's a celluloid type inlay, which was very common back in the 50s, 60s. So that's where that came from, I'm sure. Anyway, we're pretty good here. I do feel a little bit of a hump right in here. It's not that it's that important if you don't play up here anyway, but I just don't want it to buzz. You know, if we get the action low, this could potentially buzz up here. And if in case you're wondering if I caused that, I didn't file enough up here to create any problem up here. I did put a lot more pressure as I went down the neck down here, but very light pressure up here. It's very common to see where the body attaches from that point up to be either higher or sometimes lower, depending on how they did the neck. Most of the time it's higher because this is constantly pulling up, and it tends to bend it right there. I think that's pretty good. We might have to address that a little bit more when we get the clamps off there and we start putting the strings on it, but it's easily addressed if I need to. I think I'm going to go ahead and start re-crowning these now and get them rounded off, and we'll be that much further along tomorrow when we're ready to start the actual final setup with all the by setting the intonation and cutting the slot and all that stuff that we have to do tomorrow. Well, I got to thinking about it. He asked me if I had already done the crack on the back, and I got to thinking that's probably a good idea to go ahead and hit that now too, before I even crown the frets on the front. I don't know if you can hear this. and there's clamp noise and stuff, so it's hard to tell. But before I did that, I could actually hear this rattling when I would clamp it. So I know this crack here is slightly loose. This crack, I don't think is a problem. I think it's been addressed. I think it's been glued, but we'll look at it from the inside too, just to be sure. But I kind of think it's been fixed. This one for sure is definitely in need. Camera up a little different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep everything, to keep this from flooding in here and just pouring everywhere. I'm going to keep the bottle pointed up till the last minute. This is the spot where you can really make a mess on an instrument. And it's still running out faster than I really want it to. But you got to do what you got to do. And I'm working the crack now to help it suck itself down in there, and it will do that. And then I'm going to take this dry rag and wipe right up the mark. And if you do it right, you can do it without hardly any residue at all. And that's a difficult thing. That little trick right there is pretty difficult to learn. But once I figured that out, it doesn't make near as much mess on your surface there, on your finish. I'm a little bit leery to use this, but I'm going to use a little bit of it anyway. But I'll have to let it dry on its own before we do anything, because it does kind of soften the finish. I feel fairly sure that that'll solve that problem. I'm going to try to look inside and see if I can see where it ran out on the inside. That may be impossible right now with these clamps in here, but I'll see if I can see it. Oh yeah. Yeah, it ran all the way through. No question. So I think we're good. All right. Well, for you it'll just be a few seconds. For me, I gotta wait till tomorrow. The customer asked me if I had actually looked at this crack, or if I could tell if it had been repaired. And while I can't really look inside it right now, I got to pressing it in a different direction. And when I did that, I could see it move. So I knew it wasn't fixed. So I just put CA glue in there, and I worked it back and forth, and I saw the CA glue sucking in. I know it went in there. So I think we're good there too. I'm just going to lightly spritz it with this. That'll help it set up a little faster. I believe we're good. Now we'll inspect those again tomorrow when we got the clamps out of there, where we can see it better. But I feel like we're in pretty darn good shape, especially considering that one ran the full length. I said you guys weren't going to see anymore, and I could do the recrowning off camera, and I probably will do 90% of it off camera. But I'll just show you the process. I've got my large recrowning file in here, and I also have shaped these corners. I literally took them to my grinder and cut them way down, so I can get closer to the fretboard with mine than you could with yours, I'm sure. And that way I don't scratch the fretboard. They're very flat, and these really wide ones are hard to round over. That's another reason why I had to cut these corners off. Yeah, you can see what I'm doing there. I'll just do more of that off camera. So I've taken the 600 sandpaper to all this and made them nice and smooth and round, and then you can see here this first one I polished it with semi-chrome polish, and I imagine you can see that shine in there. It's pretty impressive in real life. I hope it comes across on the video. Well, we got her all cleaned up. Just looks really pretty, really nice. So now I'm going to put the Be Good oil on here. It's some kind of oils with beeswax, and I got more than enough on there, so I'll just rub it in with my hands. Then I'll let it soak for a little while, and we'll take it right back off. It doesn't have to stay on there very long. I just leave it on there a minute like that, and then I just start wiping it right back off. So there you go, looks beautiful. We decided to put a little bit of color and finish on this spot here too, so that cleaned up pretty nice. Well, it's the next day, and as you can see, we've got the clamps off of here. That's all solid. Off camera, I re-drilled all the holes, got them worked out, and then I even reamed them. I took my little reamer and reamed them all out so they're all tapered and everything's fine on that. Now we're ready to put the first strings on it so that we can set the intonation. We're going to mark where we need to cut the slot. That's what this boils down to. And so really I only need 2 strings on here to figure that out. This is just a method that I've developed over the years. Works for me anyway. Putting this leather down so that I don't scratch the top of the guitar there with this rig that I made. This rig is just made out of coat hanger wire. Okay, so I'm putting on the second string here. I've shown my string technique many times. I'll zoom in here and let you see it again. On the treble strings, I usually do go ahead and run it through the hole. Now on the bass strings I don't. I do it a totally different way, and I'll show you one of those when we actually get the stringing it up. I'll show you that method. But on this, I just pull it up here like so and leave just a little bit of a loop here, not very big. And then I go back under the string here and just pull it up tight around the post, and then I go up like that so that this locks the end of this in by wrapping it the way I did there, if you could pay attention to what I was doing there, or if you could make out what I was doing. But you always go from the inside out, and then you go back around the post, and then you come back up underneath between the post and this string, and then that locks the end of this in there where it cannot pull out. Usually I don't leave very much slack. I left a little bit more slack on this one, so I'm going to go ahead and use the string winder. But it's not, you know, I don't leave enough slack there that you have to use this winder very much, just a few turns, and then it's tight. Okay, we got the 2 strings on there, and now what we need to do is find us a temporary saddle that we can sit on top of here that will get the string action approximately where we want it. So I just so happen to have a whole bunch of saddles that I've removed off of guitars over the years. And I just pick one that looks good to my eye. This one might be too tall, but I can't tell until I try it. But we'll know here in a minute. That's pretty close. It's probably not too far off. And then we'll take my trusty little gauge. This little gauge is called the In-Size Taper Gauge, and it's a number 4630-1E. I buy them on eBay. They're not cheap. They're like 66 bucks. But they're worth their weight in gold when you do a lot of setup like I do. I've bought several of them over the years, and I'm just using it to test. See, and it's almost perfect. I'm getting better at guessing the height of that. That's at 90 thousandths right there, which is perfect. And this is at 85 thousandths, which is close enough for me. Someone from, I think it was Australia, made a comment yesterday that I need to quit saying perfect, that there's no such thing as perfect. Well, it's perfect to me. You know, your perfect might be different, but it's perfect to me. And so I'll probably continue to use the word perfect. You can choose any word you want to and do it any way you want to if you make your own videos. Let's see. I've lost my little piece of leather that I had in here. Now, where did it go? Oh, no, here. No, it is. It's there. I'm just not looking. I always put a piece of leather here too to keep it from damaging the end of the guitar. Okay, so I have the saddle just kind of set in place, just an approximate place. I don't even know for sure. You can measure this, but there's no point in even doing that. And I'll show you why here in a moment. I'm going to bring these up to pitch first, and then we'll show you the next step. All right, I've got this up to pitch, or approximate pitch. Now, I haven't checked it yet, so I'm waiting to show you here to where it's how to intonate it. I'm going to set this up on the guitar here very gently, and maybe you can see the needle, and I'll focus you in more on the needle. Now I'm going to hit it open, and it's going pretty close to the center. I'll tighten it a little bit. There's your center. Now I'm going to note the 12th fret, and you can see we're just a hair sharp. So sharp means that this string here is now too short. So I'm going to move it a little bit back. And actually, it had actually leaned forward, so I probably don't even have to move it back. I'll just straighten it up. Let's try it again. Now I'll get it back on the center. Open. This is an open note. And now I'll note it at the 12th. Boy, that's pretty close. Maybe just a fraction sharp. So just barely move it back any. And now I'll go to the bass side. All right. That's pretty sharp. Yeah, that's 20 cents sharp. So it got to go quite a bit more back. That's a pretty steep angle there. Now let's go back to the treble side. Well, thankfully that one's a little sharp still, so I'll move it a little bit too. That'll cut down the angle a little bit. Let's try the bass side again. Bass is almost on now, getting close. Let's try the treble side again. That's pretty close. So let me get my close-up glasses on here and check it one more time. Stand up where I can see it better, because I've got it angled for you guys better than me, so I want to see it really well. I think that's as good as we can do. So now I'm going to mark the very front edge of those underneath, right directly under those strings. And all I'm doing is just establishing a line. I've got my very fine lead here. This is a 0.5 millimeter lead. And so it gives me a very fine, crisp line right under those two strings. That's all I want, is just those 2 points. Because when I make my saddles, I make a slanted saddle so that the front edge will land right at on that line there. And then we know that intonation is as close as you can set it for this guitar. Okay, this is always the nerve-wracking part of this for me. I'll just tell you straight up and down. This is where you've heard the old pucker factor. Well, this is where it puckers, let me tell you. I've got it lined up as well as I think I can do it. I've checked it and watched it, and it really looks good. I don't think it's moving on me at all. I think it's staying right on the line. I'm going to make a tiny adjustment here yet, but it's very tiny. Very close to perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. And somebody, like I said, told me to quit using the word. But, you know, it's just the way I speak. If you don't like the way I speak, go watch somebody who's better at this than me. That's all I got to say about it. Just go watch somebody else. I'm sure you'll find somebody that's better, and then you'll be happy. The thing about this is, I want to plunge it down just a little bit more because it's not quite touching, and I want it to almost be touching here so I can make sure I've really got it aligned well. So I'm just moving it where it's just barely off of the wood, and I'm checking it one more time. And I'm going to spin it a little bit. I'm going to see if the front cutting edge, I'm trying to find the front cutting edge. That's the problem here, is finding that. I think that's it right there. It looks like I'm cutting about the center of the line, so I would really like to be cutting right behind the line. So I'm going to move it just a hair yet. And when I say a hair, that's all I mean, because you got to remember, it's a very fine line. It's only the 0.5 millimeter thick line. And I just want to be cutting right behind it. And it looks like that's exactly where I'm at right there. That's about as close as I can get. The bit is sitting really close to the wood there. So I'm going to use that as my 0 point. I'm taking this down. Check my connections here. Make sure they're really tight. The clamps are tight, so I can take this off of there now, and I'm going to set the depth, and I'm going to try to set the depth to approximately 100 thousandths of an inch deep. The way I'm going to set it to 100 thousandths of an inch deep is Willem, the fellow that made this, he gave me a depth finder here, this little deal. And so right now, this little post, it goes down and it touches the base of the router. So what I can do is loosen that up and slide this in between there. And this is right at 100 thousandths of an inch, or very close. So I can slide this in there, tighten this down. So now I have 100 thousandths gap in there. And then all I have to do is slide the router up to it touches this, and that's 100 thousandths of a depth. So that's pretty cool the way he did that. Now, in this case, since this is a plunge router, I don't need to do that right now. What I'm going to do is just set this on there and plunge it to the full depth, and it'll be 100 thousandths of an inch cut. So I'm going to get this on here and get it lined back up like I had it. I had that edge against the deal. Now I'm going to, just for sanity check here, I'm going to make sure it looks like it's in the right place. And it does look like it's in the right place. So, as I tell you, this is the true pucker factor here. So you got to be very careful. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself one more time. I'm just probably going to do this by eye. But I'm going to, I don't know, maybe I will just use some kind of measurement tool here. I'll just take a thick saddle and I'll stop I'm going to stop, draw a line here where I want to stop. And I'm going to stop about the thickness of a saddle away from these edges. So just about like that. And as long as it looks good by eye, that it looks like an equal distance, that's all that matters. But I'm going to stop it there. That way I'll have a nice long saddle. The longer saddle is a better sound overall, so you always want to try to use a long saddle when you can. It helps transfer the sound a little bit better. Okay, I think I'm ready to do it. Like I said, this is the part that scares the tar out of me, is you can mess up everything you've done in a heartbeat. And of course, as you've heard me say before, you do have to plug them in or they won't work. So I guess I'll plug it in now. And now we'll turn it on. Well, that went pretty well. Quite honestly, I went a little bit past my end mark down here, so I went a little bit past it on that end too, just to even it out. Doesn't really matter. It's totally arbitrary, so I just wanted to make it even by eye, so I did that. Okay, my next thing is to get another 100 thousandths depth on this, and so I'm going to do that right now. Okay, I have once again set it for another 100 thousandths deep, and yeah, here we go. Well, we did fine. It's a scary thing because you can ruin everything you've done right there. It's so scary. You get one shot at that and that's it, and you don't get to do any do-overs. You can kind of repair damage, but that's about the best you can hope for if you create a problem. Fortunately, I don't think we created any problems. Turned out very nice. It looks a little bit bumpy on this front edge, I'll just be honest, but I don't think that's enough to care about. It's very minimal, and I'll just smooth that off with a file or razor blade or whatever it takes. Otherwise, it's perfect. So, perfect enough for me. Well, I've been working down this piece of antler, and I've got it very close to going. As you can see there, it's starting down in there, but it's a little bit snug. So, I'm a little concerned that it's a little too snug at the moment. The corners get to be almost like little razors. They're such sharp corners. So I'm just knocking the very least amount off of those corners just so that they're not sharp, and that way they won't catch on anything going down in the hole. I'm not really what you call beveling them. I'm just knocking the corners off. That feels good. No sharpness there now. So let's see if it'll go down in here yet. I kind of doubt it. I'm probably still a little bit long even. And I think I am a little long, so I'll have to cut off a little bit yet on the length. I'll do that. Well, the length is right now, but it's just a hair too snug. I mean, like, I can't even tell you. It's a whisper is all it is. And so what I think I'm going to try to do is just take some 220 like this and just work it down by hand, just the least little bit, because that's all I think it's going to take. It doesn't need much at all at this point. And 220 will make it so slick that it'll slide in there and out a little bit better too. This may look like I'm doing a lot, but trust me, this is taking off almost nothing. It probably isn't going to go yet. Ah, boy, it's right on the edge. I think we've improved it some, but we're still not all the way going down. Now where the problem probably is when you route these slots, you know, you have to route them in a couple of passes. You can't route the full depth in one pass, at least not with my setup. And so probably there's a slight ridge in there. So I'm going to take my X-Acto knife. I'll have to get me a good sharp blade here, and then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to just rub that edge and try to get rid of that little ridge on both sides. And I'm sure that's what the problem is at this point. And you know, it's just 1/1000th of an inch is all it is. This blade I've got in here seems to be doing a pretty good job, so I'll just use it. I can see the same little ridge on the end, which is a little bit harder to do anything with. Let's see if that made the difference, because it's, like I said, it's seriously close to going. I think there's still a little ridge on this side. I think this side's going, but this side here's got a little bit of something. It's so close. It's not very tight exactly. I mean, it's snug, but it's not crazy tight. Okay, so what I do now is when I get it in there and I think I'm down, and I'm not sure I'm down yet on this, to be honest, but then I take and mark it with this fine pencil lead again, and I mark the full depth, or the full length, and then I'll check the depth here to see if it's the full. So you can look and see that line is pretty parallel. That means it's getting down in there all the full depth, or at least at a parallel depth. And then this should measure in the neighborhood of 200 thousandths. I haven't even checked the trench. Let's just check the trench and see. 185 thousandths roughly is what that's measuring to right now. Let me check it again. Yeah, 185 thousandths. So let's check here. I'm measuring that. I'm actually measuring it deeper than that, so that would be impossible. So we know we're going full depth. So we know we're all the way down. And I just like to make sure it is by pressing on it really good. Now the situation is, and I wished I would have kept that saddle separate that I used for setup. Well, I don't really know if that's the one I use for setup. I wished I would have kept it out and thought about that, but I put it back with the rest of them. I dug this one out, and it looks really close to what I had before, so I'm just going to use it as a ballpark. And so really, I'm not going to cut it to this exact size or anything. I'm just using it kind of as a ballpark there, and that'll just give me something to use when I go over to the saw, that I won't cut it any shorter than that. More than likely will it be way high, but you don't know until you know. So anyway, I'll go cut that off and I'll show you what that looks like. I have another sander dedicated to sanding the bevel on these, and I set that at 12 degrees just in case you're interested. That seems to be a pretty good angle for these, for most guitars. You may need to vary it a little bit if you get real picky about it, but that works pretty good on the average. And I'm just knocking off just again the sharp corner, just so that there's no sharpness there. And we're gonna put her home there, and she's all the way in. It's a pretty tall saddle, so I have a feeling we're way high, but you don't know till you know. So we'll put some strings on there and see where we're at. So I'm gonna sit in the two E strings again, just in place. Now I told you I would show you my technique again for the stringing, so let's just show you that while we're doing this. The bass side's much easier, the way I do it, and it's quick too, you know, and it works really good, and it winds down the post like you need to do to make it work better, make your instrument better. So what I do is I just take and I go from the inside of the post and I wrap around the outside of the post like that, and I go around again, and then I come back around one more time like that. So you can tell I'm wrapping so that the string here is at the bottom of the post, and I'm wrapping above that. And that way your string is wound down the post. Then I slide this through again from the inside out, and then just pull that up tight. And I would pull it up tight with my hand, except my arthritis is bothering me today, so I'll just grab my pliers here and pull it like that, pull it up tight, and then I just bring it straight up after that, and then I just take the nippers. I just take the nippers and nip it straight off flush with the top of the post like that. So that'll never go anywhere, I promise you. And see how your string's almost instantly tight. That's the advantage of that. You just pull it up tight, wrap it around there 1.5 times or 2 times, and then back through the hole, and you're done. It's just that simple. It's the fastest way you can do it, and it's the most accurate way in terms of not having to keep winding and winding and winding. Now on the treble, as I said, I don't do it that way, only because I just want them to be secured a little bit tighter. I do them more the traditional way, and I've already shown this, but I'll show it again. I'm going to go ahead and cut off this end where I used it before. We can reuse these strings because we had them extra long because they were hooked on my tail intonation piece. So in this case, I go from the inside out, and then I pull it up, you know, with a small loop like that. I go back around the outside of the post like this, go underneath it, and this is curled, so it's kinked because I'm using it before, so it's a little harder, honestly, but it's normally not this hard. And anyway, so then I pull it back through like that, and in my case, again, because my hands hurt, I'm just going to grab it with these pliers, and then I'm just going to lift it straight up like that. What that does is that wraps this piece here, it wraps around that end there, and that cannot come loose then. It cannot. It's impossible. And then you go ahead and tighten this up. Now this method does require you have to turn it a little bit. But if you don't leave too much, you won't have to use, it won't have to spin a bunch of turns. Just a few like this, and now it's almost tight. So you don't really have to turn it too much. But on the treble side, I like to use that method because these are slicker and they'll slide out, where these won't. These big heavy ones, they'll be fine just like that. So this side I use that method, this side I use the method over here that I showed you first. All right, so now let's just test and see about how high we are. I'll bring these up to pitch. This won't be a perfect test because there's only 2 strings, but it's a close enough test. It's close enough for a ballpark test. And I don't much care whether I'm perfect tuning or not. I'm just more or less for the tension, and I want to check the height here. So, right now this is just preliminary checking the height is all it really amounts to. And I'm way high, I can tell. That's fine. I kind of expected that. Okay, I'm at 100 and... I'm going to call it 125 thousandths is where we're at right now. I'm going to write that down. So the big E is 125 thousandths. And then the little e is, let's check it. The reason I keep tapping on this is that way I can see if there's any airspace under there, and I keep tapping it till I don't see the string move, and then I know right where I'm at. I'm going to call that 100 and I'm going to call that about 112 thousandths. you know, I want this to be 90 and 80. All right, so what you do is you just subtract the differences there. The difference between the 80 and the 112 is what, 32? Okay, and the difference between 125 and 90 is 35, I guess. So basically you double those numbers. On the bass side, if there's 35 thousandths, if it's 35 thousandths high, you're going to have to take 70 thousandths off of the bass side of the saddle here. If I'm 35 thousandths high right here, then I need to take double that off right here in order for this to drop to that. Same way over here, I'm 32 thousandths high, I need to take double that off. So all I need to do is pull this saddle out of here, take that much off, and we're going to be really close to a perfect type setup. And you can pretty much do it in just this one step like this. Okay, I've shown you before how I do this, but basically I just make a dark spot here on each end down at the bottom of the saddle, so it'll be down in the slot. You'll never see that anyway. Then I just take my calipers, my calipers that leap all over the shop, and I make sure the setting is on 0, and they are. And then I want to take off 70 thousandths on the bass side, so because I want to double 35, so that's 70. So I set this on 70. There's 70.5. That's close enough for this game. And all I do is just scratch across there, and you'll probably be able to see the little line that you can see right there that's scratched across there. And then I want to set the other side on 64, which is just a tiny bit less. There's 64 on the nose, and we'll scratch that. And you can see the 2 scratch marks. Now all I do is take it over to the sander and just bump it into the sander till those marks just basically are touching the sander. And we're done. It's just that simple. So I slid her into the sander till those marks basically touched and stopped right there. We should be able to slide it in the slot this time. We should be able to string her up this time, and it should be very close here. Now, the one exception to that could be all the strings on it, and if this neck is not good and solid, it could pull it up perhaps, but I don't expect that to be the case in this particular instrument. It just depends on the instrument, but I think we're going to be just fine. We'll be within a few thousandths of where we think we're going to be, I'm just sure. Well, the action is just a fraction high. I got to be honest, I was thinking it'd be a little closer. I'm right at 100 thousandths on this side, so that's about 10 thousandths more than I want. And I'm about 95-ish on this side, so that's about 15 thousandths. Or maybe it's not that much. Let's see here. Take it back. I'm going to call it 90. So it's about 10 thousandths here and about 10 thousandths here. So I really need to take off about 20 thousandths all the way across this saddle now that I've got all the tension on it. So I'm going to do that real quick, again off camera. And you saw how I did it before in terms of marking it. I'll do the same thing again, but this time only 20 thousandths. So it's not going to take much. After I got the action set here, which I think it's set really well, I'm going to, I went ahead and started checking the nut, and I found that these were all a little bit high. Part of that would be from re-leveling the frets, but it's just probably always been a little high, actually. And so I'm knocking these down. I've knocked the first 3 bass ones down quite a bit. I just use a thin Martin pick. They're about 16 thousandths of an inch. And you can see here they slide under there very easy, very easy. And they shouldn't. They should be at least snug. And it's not snug at all. In fact, it's got quite a bit of play. So on the treble side, that is, it should be at least snug with a thin pick. So we're going to get it snug. And again, the most important thing is not to rock this file. You want to keep it at the exact same angle as either your peg head or any fixed angle that just stays that way. You don't want to rock it. That's the main thing. Let's check that one and see where we're at. I don't take them all the way back up to pitch, but I like to get them tight. And then I just press on it to see if I can still press it down. Sometimes a little teeny bit of pressing is okay, but on these treble side ones here, I don't really like them to be able to press down much. That one is very, very close to where I want it, but I'm going to take it down just a tiny amount more, and it'll play just that much better. The thing you don't want to do is go too far. Once you go too far, you're too far. And you just have to build a new one or make a new one, or you have to play the patch game, and I don't play the patch game. So I try to get them all up to pitch as I do this, except for the one I'm working on. So you can see there's almost no movement in that now. So that's close enough for the G. Each one of them gets a little bit closer to the pick each time. Like these here, there's still a teeny bit of play there, but it's really just touching the pick basically. All of them are just barely touching the pick. So now these two here, I'll make them even just the slightest amount tighter than that. But you can easily get 2 picks in here on this one right now. So this is at least 16 thousandths too high. I'm going to check that because it felt like it went deep fairly quickly, and there could have been some filler in that one. I don't know. I don't believe this customer put anything in there, but it could have been there from a long time ago, because it felt like it jumped down as I filed it there. I'm going to call that good. It went right just about perfect. It's not really raising the string, but it's touching the string, so I'm going to call that good enough. Like I said, it felt like it dropped when I was filing that one, so there may have been a little bit of filler or something in there from, maybe even from the factory for all I know. You get to where you recognize these things and you feel these things happen, and boy, you better stop and check it when you feel that, because otherwise you're too deep too fast. And this one feels almost the same way, like there's something in there. It's really, really close. We could live with it, but I think I'm going to go just a teeny bit more. Okay, that's about as good as it can be done right now. Now the question is, will it play, or will it buzz, or will it even intonate? So let's check all that real quick. So I'll turn the camera up here, and you're going to have to take my word for it. I'll be watching these on the tuner here. You're not going to really be able to see the tuner, I don't think. Sometimes I got to see what I'm doing, not just you. Anyway, so I'm tuning the E here. Get it on dead center, and then I'm going to check the intonation. Pretty dang close. In fact, it looks dead on to me. See, I didn't say perfect that time. Now that's the A string. It's a couple of cents flat, but it's just, when you get to that close, it's like a dog can barely hear that, so that's pretty dang good. I'll call that good enough. Go to D. That's just almost dead on. There's the G. Just real close to dead on. Here's the B. Now the B might be off, because often you see the B set back. But we're going to check it and see here. I have a feeling it's going to be just fine. Right on dead center. I mean, dead center. It's the worst one seemed to be this second string, and it was just a cent or two off. And let me just check that I didn't do something wrong. Let me just see if it's okay. It still shows about a cent flat. there's not much you can do about that. You know, when you get them that close, that's just, check your own guitar if you think I'm kidding and see how close it is on every string. That's just about as close as you can get one right there. I'm pretty happy with that, and let me double check the action one more time. I'm pretty sure we're down there. Yeah, we're just 89, 90 right there, so that's perfect. And this one is, oh, I said perfect, doggone it. Then this one here is 80. That's what I was shooting for. Can't beat that. I think I'm done. Let's see what the customer has to say about it. Well, my friends, I think we did a pretty decent job setting up this guitar. I'm pretty happy with it. About every single thing that could work out good for a change did. You know, usually it's the other way around. It's like, yeah, if it can go wrong, it usually goes wrong. In this case, if it could go right, it did go right. So I'm pretty happy with this. I think the customer seems to be okay with it. So I'm going to turn it over to George and let him do his thing.
Well, I want to thank Jerry first. I got to tell you, I watched him too much. He's probably not appreciative of my overlording, but my gosh, it's just wonderful to bring this old guitar back into shape. I mean, it plays better than it's ever played from the minute I picked it up from the music store.
Well, it seems like it's got plenty of punch.
It sounds so good. It's so easy to play too.
Yeah, it was pretty high actually. Remember, there's a couple things we may have not filmed on this. One of them was a lot of these plastic inlays were loose, and we did tighten up all of those. And then there was several internal braces that were loose on the back, loose in at least 3 or 4 places. And so we glued all that back with some CA glue and devised a little wedge in there to hold them tight while they were setting up. And all that happened too. So just in case we didn't get that on film, now you know that too.
Oh, it sounds so good.
It does. It's got a very nice sound.
I can't play bar chords anymore, so I learned how to.
I guess I'm slipping though. I did forget to do something. I forgot to oil the bridge, so we need to put a little oil on the bridge.
Yeah, Jerry.
Yeah, I'm slipping. Hey, I'm 67, you know. You get old.
You're a young man, Jerry.
You forget things, you know. But we do want to put a little oil on the bridge. Other than that, I think we're done. Well, except that you said something about this pickup. Do you want to put the pickup in there? Or?
Oh, yeah. I think this sounds unbelievable. I'd love to have it in there.
Okay, all right, we'll put the pickup in there. Well, my friends, that pickup took a little bit more time than I was expecting, but not too bad. No real major issues, just a little bit of forgetting how they go in there and stuff because I hadn't done one in a while. But got it working just fine. Turned out perfect. We did also remember to put the oil on the bridge. George is looking it over there now. Are you happy, George?
I'm extremely happy. I can't wait. Can't wait to take it home and play it.
Well, good.
I've got some friends I want to show it to.
Well, good. You know, as far as playing it goes, it ought to play easier than it ever did. Because it seemed like it was pretty high.
It helps me to play, that's for sure. I need as much help as I can get.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure, George. Thank
you, Jerry.
Thanks for coming here.
Excellent work. Thank you so much.
Glad you like it. Y'all take care. Give us a thumbs up.